when she's not around, 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 and all I want to do is sit and wonder. Welcome back to the NWA Connie Corso, but this is actually a collaboration. Thank you, YouTube, for finally making it available to creators like myself and this extraordinary young man right here, Alexander Gunter. How's it going, sir?
Okay. I don't know about young anymore. I just had a birthday, just turned 59.
Oh,
So
well,
I don't
happy
know if I'm
birthday.
young
Happy
anymore.
birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Generation X, all right? So I'm not that young, but I'm not
Yeah,
that old yet. All right.
that's
So
what's up. Yeah.
we're the best generation, just
Yeah, for
in
sure.
case anybody's wondering.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Man, I just wanted to take the time right now just to thank you
Oh,
personally. You've been another pillar on my show
thank you.
down through the years. We have a great working relationship. You're
It's
a
been what,
man of
3 years now, right?
3 years, brother, and
3 years goes by fast.
yeah, it does, it does, and we did a lot of collaborations. We ain't schemed up ways to make money. We put the dogs first, right?
That's all right.
And your character, brother. You never asked me to do something wrong or in favor of you for my channel. Never weaponize our channels against people and different things. So, me personally, and I'm gonna speak for everybody that have been watching this channel for years, brother. We thank you for all the contributions
Oh,
you have
oh, thank
gave
you,
to
Joe. That's
the
very
world, brother.
heartfelt. Thank you very
Yes,
much, sir.
sir. Yes, sir.
Very
All right.
heartfelt.
Yeah. What's going on? How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm expecting a litter. Bred my girl Bella to Winston.
Hmm.
Puppies are expected to arrive, God willing, everything goes well, April 1st. All sold out. Well, 6 are sold out. If we have more, I'm keeping one for myself, so maybe one spot left.
Oh,
But
there you go.
for now, I it's
Mm.
going to be a superior breeding. The dog is imported from Germany, from the famous Perot kennel, which had a lot of WUSV winners and BSP Bundesprogen winners, which is the entire champion of all of Germany.
Hmm.
WUSV is the world champion, not in the show ring, in the working.
Right.
I'm not a fan of the show ring, to be honest with you. I think they, I think they promote the wrong aspects of what makes a dog successful, and I think the show ring has been detrimental in most breeds. I'm not to say that you don't need shows,
Right.
but I think that the over stylized dogs of the show ring in many breeds, not just my own breed, have taken away from what the true purpose of a breed is.
Yep.
And I think that the people who are confirmation score people, like, oh, this dog is an inch and a half too short here and an inch and a
Mm.
half. Well, what does that have to do with the character of the dog?
Yeah.
What does that have to do with the ability of the dog? So
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the show crowd. Not to say I don't dislike them personally, but I think that it shouldn't be the core breeding decision guideline. It should be a guideline, not the core guideline.
Yes, sir.
And that's the problem I see in the show crowd, in my
Yeah. Well, we all guys like me and you. We always talk about, been preached for years, the total dog. We believe in
absolutely.
a total dog, not no one
Absolutely.
side dog. You know what I mean?
I
Yeah.
think we as dog breeders have a moral obligation to the very animals we produce.
Yes, sir.
And I think that it's great to have great conversations. Some people are great conversationalists
Hmm.
and very well spoken. Some people have advanced degrees, like a master's degree in biology. Um, different people have different backgrounds. I don't speak about my own degrees. I have a degree in physics. and I have a degree in electrical engineering. I don't think I ever mentioned it, but in case people were wondering. But I don't consider myself more educated or less educated than somebody who just knows dogs and loves animals, because I don't think you need an advanced degree
No.
to
Yeah.
understand animals, but I do think you have to have a moral compass. I think that if you breed a puppy and
Hmm.
that puppy is mistreated, you have to have a way of getting that puppy back under your control, because that dog is a part of your family, represents your breeding program, represents your brand, represents your production. And I don't see myself as selling dogs. I see myself as placing dogs.
That's right.
I see if you're a good match for what I produce and you fit my criteria, maybe you'll get a dog from me, or
Hmm.
maybe you won't. I'm not a large breeder program. I'm not running a large scale operation.
Hmm.
Breeding is not my full-time income, and so I'm not depending on this income to pay my bills. So somebody shows up, thinks they offer me money, and I'll definitely get them a dog. No, I won't. I have the power to say no.
That's right.
And if a person leads the conversation, if I get a phone call from a buyer or a text message and the first thing they write is price, exclamation mark, you're off the table. You know
Yeah.
why?
Hmm.
Because I'm not in the volume business and I'm not selling inventory. I'm selling living things.
Yeah.
And if you approach it from a price comparison point of view, you're a price shopper, you're haggling about price. You ask me nothing about my dogs. You ask me nothing about the genetic testing I do. You ask me nothing about their temperaments or the lines that make up their dog. You're not the right buyer for me, because you're buying like a consumer purchase, as if you are um, buying a refrigerator.
Right.
I got a
Right.
refrigerator there for 1,000, and I got a Whirlpool for 1,200.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but even with stuff like that, refrigeration, cars, like I'm in the car market right now. I'm
Right?
looking at the specifications. I'm looking
Exactly.
at it, does it fit my lifestyle?
Exactly.
You know
Exactly.
what I mean?
And that's a car, and it's a machine.
This machine. Yeah.
And this is a living thing, which is sentient.
Exactly. Right.
And you're talking to me price first psychology.
Hmm.
I get turned off by that. And I have a lot of videos on my channel. I have a video called How to Talk to Breeders.
Hmm.
I have another video on my channel
Which
called
what's the name of your channel, actually?
it's Van Ganta House.
Okay,
In case
yeah.
anybody wants to know how that breaks down, because it sounds a little unusual.
Mhm,
Van in German means from.
mhm.
Ganta is my last name, and Haus is the German spelling of the word house versus the American spelling of the word house. So it means from Ganta's house. So, which is not a bad way to call it, since
Right.
it's accurate. You know. So, but anyhow, I I did a lot of videos with you, and you were very
And
instrumental in introducing me to your audience, for which I'm very grateful. I think
likewise.
what's in common is we're an ethics first breeder.
Mhm,
I think we're making. I'm not saying we make no money selling dogs. I'm not saying that's the primary motivator, but it is, a money
yeah.
making. It is a business.
My dogs have financed this show.
But what I mean is, I will never put money ahead of ethics.
That's right.
I always feel that anybody who looks at these platforms as money first, everything else second,
Mhm.
logic is not in the right business.
No.
If they're looking at dogs for quick money or a scheme to make quick money, they're in the wrong business. It's a slow game. Developing a line of dogs or a family of dogs is a slow game, and this is not people don't realize it's not an easy game. Anybody who's seen a puppy die, like I have, it breaks your heart.
Mhm.
Anybody who's taken a puppy back, which was abused and mistreated, it breaks your heart. So anybody who thinks, oh well, let's do some simple math. 2,500, 3,500 per puppy, 10 puppies, that's 35,000. And they start counting money like it's already in their hand. Well, hold on there, Sparky. There's whelping supplies, advertising costs, the cost of sleepless nights, because in the first few weeks you're not sleeping. You have to feed them around the clock.
Mhm.
The death of a puppy, it's an emotional toll. And also, in my opinion, before you become a breeder, you have to have an agreement with your spouse. If it's you're a man, your wife, if you're a woman, your husband,
They have to be on board.
they have to be on board.
Mhm.
And I don't mention it. I should have mentioned it. It was not on purpose. It was just something I didn't think of saying. It was not on purpose. But my wife, she is the brains behind Juan Ganta House. She's a nurse. She whelps every litter.
Mhm.
She she clamps the umbilical cord so they don't get a
Mhm.
hernia. She turns them upside down, gets the fluid out of their
Yep.
lungs,
Mhm.
gets them that first breath so their lungs expand. I mean, she's very hands on.
Mhm.
And what are her medical skills of whelping? The female dog trusts her because the mother dog is very edgy during the birth process.
That's right.
So you got to take the placenta away. If it's a dead puppy, you got to take it away, do a kind of a sleight of hand where you're taking the dead puppy out, hide it like you did nothing, and put the good puppy on the breast and not make the female notice like you're taking her puppy away from her.
Mhm.
And it's a little bit of, and the female dog has to really trust its owner, both owners, obviously. But my wife is very hands on, and I want to give her a lot of credit because without her, I mean, I'm the face of the breedership. You know, I do the advertising, I speak to buyers, I vet the buyers. I'm the one who goes to dog shows
Mhm.
and I compete as best as I can in IGP. I used to compete in AKC Abelians back in the late 80s. I was 21 and 88, so that's a
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
little
yeah.
bit of
The my wife is I wouldn't be able to do it without her.
right,
So the family, even my son, he
right. They're
does
involved.
it. Yeah, it's a
It's
it's
a
a cool
small
thing.
family-run business. It's
Yes,
not like a commercial scale
right.
breedership where there are 14 dogs. I'll tell you something else. I'll share a story before we go on to the main topic. I want your audience to hear this story. I had a lady call me. Her name is Elizabeth. I'm not going to say her last name. She called me very sad, very upset. And usually I don't get such phone calls. And she says, Alex, do you remember me? I says, well, I'm sorry, your voice does not ring a bell. She says, well, 4 years ago, I spoke with you to get a dog. You explained West German working lines, you explained show lines, and I didn't buy a puppy from you. I said, oh, so how can I help you if I didn't sell you a dog?
Mhm.
Well, I'm sorry to tell you that my dog died. And now I'm not in the market for a new dog. I said, oh, I'm very sorry for your loss. It's very tragic. If you don't mind me asking, what did your dog die from? She says it died from DM, degenerative myelopathy, which is like Lou Gehrig's disease in people. First, the spinal nerves become atrophied and the dog becomes paralyzed, and death follows very soon afterwards. And it's a bad death. It's not a quick death. It's not like fall. The best death is you fall asleep and you don't wake up. That's a kind death. A death when you're suffering as you're dying, that's a terrible death. So she says, so I didn't listen to you. The breeder didn't do genetic testing, and my dog died of DM. I can't tell you the thousands and thousands of dollars I spent to keep this dog healthy because the dog had other genetic diseases besides DM.
Mhm.
I said to her, if you don't mind me asking, how much did you spend on medical costs over the life of this dog, and how long did the dog live? She says the dog lived 4 years. I said, okay. And I counted my medical bills. I spent 30,000 over 4 years. So I said, let me get this straight. You spent 30,000 over 4 years to keep this dog healthy and functional, and it died anyhow. She said, yes. So you must have really loved this dog to spend so much money. Not many people would do that. That says a lot about you. I respect that, I said. He says, if you don't mind me asking, how much did you pay for the puppy? She says, I paid $850 for the puppy. I says,
Mm.
$850 for the puppy? She said, yeah. I says, where did you buy this puppy? She says, I went to a place in Pennsylvania that had 15 dogs of one breed and 15 dogs of another breed, 30 dogs total. One man was running 30 dogs. I says, he had no staff? No. I says, well, I'm sorry to tell you, I said, but you were an impulsive buyer. You did not wait for my litter. I told you it's a short wait until the pregnancy is conceived. There's only a 4 month time period you had to wait. From pregnancy, birth is about 2 months later, and then they have to be at least 2 more months old to get to your home. So from the birth to the time you get it, it's only 4 months. For an animal that will live with you for 12 to 14 years, what's 4 months?
Mhm.
Yes, I know I was impulsive. I was impulsive. I learned my mistake. Can I get a puppy from you now? After hearing how much she spent on caring for a sick dog, I knew she was a caring person. So I uh, was very touched by her conversation. Why I bring up this story is this is to educate both the regular consumer and the other breeders. For the regular consumer, here's my message to you. You're price shopping, you'll pay not once, not twice, not 4 times, 40 times what the dog costs you in medical bills. If the dog is so sickly that it requires so much medical intervention, rather than getting a health tested puppy from an ethical breeder, you went to a puppy mill because you were in a rush. Now, you might be okay, but you might not be. And I want everybody who's a regular consumer watching this show to get that lesson of that poor lady, Elizabeth, her name is, into your head because this is a real life example. I'm not making this up.
Mhm.
So, for the regular consumer, I hope you got my message loud and clear. You
Right.
people watching the show who's a breeder, if you're refusing to do genetic testing, you shouldn't breed dogs.
Mhm.
You can't spend $135 on the father dog and the mother dog, 135 each, $270. If you can't spend $270 to do a genetic test on the parent dogs, so you're not breeding a carrier to a carrier, you should not be breeding animals because you have no ethics. You're passing your cost of genetic problems from your pocket onto the consumer's pocket.
Right.
It's not fair.
Right.
So for the breeder watching this video, if you're not gonna, I'm gonna about to present a breeding strategy in this video, which I
Mhm.
will describe in great detail. But again, if you're watching this and you're not doing genetic testing, this video is not for you. You're too cheap, but your cheapness is at the expense of animals' lives. So if you're not going to genetically test, shame on you. Because it's
Right.
one thing these tools are not available. You know, if we lived in 1945, 1965, 1985, 2010, 2011, 2012, these tools were not available. But
Right.
but now they are available and they're incredibly cheap. Why don't you take advantage of them?
Mhm.
And so people who are not genetically testing their dogs, there's just no reason for it. It's so affordable
Mhm.
that you can't help but do it. So
Right.
I wanted to, before we talk about the main topic today will be a line breeding strategy on the female.
Right.
It's
What you calling the
a
two
two rail.
rail strategy, the two rail
Right.
system.
Correct.
Um, and this is gonna be different because most breeders are a lot of talk around the sire is that we got like people obsessed with the sire building it off
Right. Right.
the studs or whatnot. And you know they can and the studs can produce
Oh yeah.
hundreds of offspring, you
Right.
know. But what is the advantage of the female system, the two rail system, building the line off her?
All right. I want to explain the two rail system in a second, but
Mhm.
first you have to understand what you're trying to develop and why. The stud dog is what sells. He's bigger, he's more powerful, he's more pronounced. I have a video I'm going to show a little later of a dog in my program called Yukon Vampiro.
Mhm.
That video has 29,000 views. Not on my channel, but on the original channel that posted him.
Mhm.
29K views. And this is a video from 2008. He was bred to a dog named Frenzy van Roertham from the kennel, Volksfried kennel. German man named Volksfried, his last name is Volksfried, runs that kennel. And and she was the female 2008 champion that Yukon was bred to,
Mhm.
which is where my dog Born van Volksfried was born from those two uh, mother and father.
Hmm.
Do you know how many videos the female has on her channel, on her YouTube?
Hardly any.
129.
Oh, 129. Okay, cool.
129 compared to 29,000.
Yeah.
This is the female champion.
Yeah, I didn't think it'll be that much.
So the
Well,
male got 29,000 views. The very
29,000.
female he was bred to
Mhm.
got 129 or 125 views, which is telling you that
The
people
thought
think
process.
the thought process is the stud. Yeah,
Mhm.
we got to get the best stud, and that's what we're going to produce. In fact, what does the breeder actually own? If you think about it, the most important dogs in the breeder is the females. That's what the breeders actually own. They own the females. You don't actually even have to own a male to create a breeding program. You can rent
Yeah.
the male for the cost of a stud fee. So for the cost of a stud fee, you can breed to the world champion if you want to,
Yeah. Yeah.
and or you can get shipment of free semen frozen shipped to you, and as a consequence, you can get the highest blood there is for the cost of a stud fee. But what you as a breeder actually own, your line is actually your females. That's what
Female.
you actually own.
Mhm.
So why wouldn't you want to produce your females again, genetically speaking, into the next generation? Now the problem is if you breed a female to a male, you've diluted her blood because now that offspring is 50% the male and 50% the female,
Mhm.
and you cut in half every time you dilute. So a granddaughter will be only a quarter of her grandmother.
Mhm.
And so if you have great females, you're diluting it unless you find a way to concentrate it. So one of the reasons you should have a female-based program is because males get the applause, but females carry the program.
Yeah. Yeah.
Females are the backbone of every breeder's program, and emphasizing the female, in my opinion, is worth more than emphasizing the male. Not that the male is unimportant, and most line breeding programs are built on the male,
Right.
let's
The
face it.
male. Yeah.
So a
Yeah.
line, in 90% of the time, a line is father, grandfather, great grandfather, great great grandfather. So you can take the lineage of a line through the male side. So a line is usually a male based, and I'm not denying that.
Mhm.
But what makes a great breedership is the females. Take for example horses. You had Secretariat, a very famous racehorse.
Mhm.
The quality of the females he was bred to determined the quality of the outcome. Not that he wasn't a great horse, but who owned the best mare usually produced the champion. Not the male determined the outcome, the female determined the outcome. And so one of the reasons you want a female-based approach is that's what you own. You own the females as a breeder. So why not perpetuate your own blood of your own kennel? That's what you own.
Mhm.
So that's the first reason. The second reason is mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA. Let's explain that for a minute. In an animal like a dog or a wolf, they have 78 chromosomes.
Mhm.
76 of 78 are called autosomal chromosomes. The last two, number 77 and number 78, are the sex-linked chromosomes, X and Y. If it's a girl, it's XX. If it's a boy, it's XY. Now, the X chromosome is as big as an autosomal chromosome, and it's a genetic payload of 10 to the fourth, meaning 10 to the fourth power is 10,000. Wait, 10 to the fourth. 10 squared is 100, 10 cubed is 1,000, 10 to the fourth. Yeah, 10 to the fourth is 10,000. By comparison, the Y chromosome is like 125, 150. So you got 10,000 versus 100. In other words, it's a big order of magnitude difference in terms
Yeah.
of genetic payload. So an X chromosome carries, for example, appetite. How good is the appetite in the animal?
Mhm.
Calcium absorption, zinc absorption. For example, let's say you have a dog with ATP7, you have a Labrador Retriever, which is copper toxicity. You breed an ATP7 to an ATP7, you're going to get liver disease. You're going to get copper not expunged by the liver. It's going to build up in the liver, and the dog will die of cirrhosis. Okay,
Yeah.
now Guess what carries the carrier for ATP7, the Y or the X? The X.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So the X chromosome carries a big genetic payload in comparison to the Y chromosome. All the Y chromosome does essentially is determine the sex of the babies, where you're going to get male babies or female babies.
Mm-hmm.
But from a genetic payload point of view, it doesn't carry much information in comparison to the X chromosome. Now, a male is an X and a Y, whereas his X is not really his X, it's his mother's X. So the
Mm-hmm.
X chromosome in the male is the male's mother's X, not his. And since he only has one X, he can only pass that, not because the Y does not pass with. So now, when you're breeding a female dog, if you line breed in the female, we're going to get into the technique in a minute, you're passing the mitochondrial line of that female. Now, he says, well, why is that significant? Well, the reason it's significant is out of the 76 autosomal chromosomes, you have what's called gene recombination. Now, let's say you have brothers and sisters in the same litter.
Right.
They're all 50% related to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Of that 76, and I'm doing the math in my head, so forgive me, 34 of 76 are going to be the same across all siblings. So 50% of their DNA is the same across every sibling in the litter. That's why they're siblings. But they're not clones. So
Right.
if they were clones, they'd be all 76 if they were twins.
Right.
But they're siblings. So it's 34 are the same as your baseline, is your floor. The other 34, which makes up 76, is random combinations from the mother and father. For example, from this puppy, let's call it red tag, he got the father's 1 through 14 chromosome and the mother's 16 through 22nd chromosome.
Okay.
I'm making up a number. The
Right.
next puppy got the father's 8th through 24th chromosome, but the mother's 1st to 16th chromosome. In other words, it's a random combination from each parent each time. It's called gene recombination.
Right.
Now, no matter the gene recombination that happens, which makes your brother look more like your mom, and your sister may look more like the dad. That's how or other characteristics. Now, but guess what never changes in gene recombination?
What's that?
The X chromosome. The X chromosome is passed exactly as it is, despite the gene recombination in the other chromosomes.
Hmm.
So you have gene recombination causing changes of traits in the autosomal chromosomes, but you have a consistent mitochondrial chromosome no matter what happens in the autosomal chromosomes. The empty DNA passes along despite the gene recombination in the other chromosomes. And somebody else says, well, yeah, that's true. That's how biology works. What's your point? Well, there are several points that can be made from that. The first is that there's something called epigenetics.
Mm-hmm.
The mother is responsible for the nursing and care of the puppies while they're in the whelping box. If a mother is aggressive to her puppies, or a mother tries to bite them because her nipples hurt, by the 21st day, roughly the third week, they start developing little teeth in their
Yeah.
nipples. They're hurting the mother's nipples.
Right.
If she's a good mother, she's not going to bite them. She's going to push them away, or she'll stand up and get out so she doesn't get hurt by their little chompers. But she's not going to bite them. But a bad mother will growl at her own puppies and be aggressive to her own puppies. And that initial imprinting of aggression will be in the puppies. So no matter how much socialization you do later, that imprinting by a bad mother
Mm-hmm.
cannot be compensated for. That aggression now is part of their mental makeup. That's called epigenetics. Only a female can influence the puppies that way. The male, he did his job. Goodbye, good luck, hasta la vista. but
Yeah.
but the mother has a very big role in how the bearing the pups, and her patience and love is absorbed and felt by the puppies. So that's from an epigenetics point of view. From a genetics point of view, mitochondrial DNA can provide resistance to disease. You can provide ability to resist strains of disease. So the strength of your line lies in your ability to resist diseases that can wipe out your line.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
only passed in mtDNA, not autosomal DNA.
Hmm.
Now, you also have the concept of called incomplete dominance. So in a simple Punnett square with monogenetic traits, you can determine that with monogenetic traits. But most traits are polygenetic. Not one gene determines it. Maybe three genes are involved in one trait, and maybe six genes are involved in another trait. Very seldom one gene to one trait relationship. Only maybe color of the coat is a
Hmm.
one gene to one gene relationship. But most traits are polygenetic. And some traits are dominant, some are recessive, and some are incomplete dominant, which is a complicated topic, but
Yeah.
that's how it works. Now, guess what never gets changed? The mtDNA.
Hmm.
So while you're trying to create prepotency, which is the ability to pass traits, you're ignoring the most obvious thing you have, which is the mitochondrial DNA, as a way to pass traits. So while you're trying to line breed on the male, you're ignoring what's right in front of your nose, the female.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah,
so,
because you, I want to go. I was thinking about something you said
right,
that female is important too because you get to see different aspects beside what you wouldn't see with a male, like litter size,
right,
how she cares for her
right,
puppies, and different things like that.
correct. And also you get to see if she's influential or not. I'll give you an example.
Right.
My girl Bailey was bred to two different stud dogs in her breeding career. She's now retired.
Mm-hmm.
I don't breed past a certain age. I don't think it's ethical
Mm.
because they're not pumping machines pumping out puppies. So you can
What
maybe
age is that for you? 6.
six for
Okay.
me. Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, with one male, Jake, she produced a certain kind of puppy. With Jago, the next male, which with Jake died, she produced a different kind of puppy. I was able to evaluate the female based on what her production is with a different male.
Mm.
And what I noticed was in both litters, they were all good. What was the common denominator? The mother. And she had a lot of puppies that looked like her, that were sable and they had her body structure. When I did her embark COI, it was 30%, which was surprising to me because she was only a line breeding of 4-4 and a dog named Bandit van Oberhauser. So I asked, said, why would a 4-4 cause such a high COI? I believe it or not, I asked ChatGPT because it's becoming a tool.
Mm-hmm.
It answers some curious questions that you can't answer. So the tool said there's something called ROH, runs of homogeneity, and Bandit van Oberhauser was a very prolific dog which sired a lot of males and females. So even though she's not that related to him, a lot of that gene pool in Germany, which these working dogs come from, had so much of his influence 4 or 5 generations back that whether you like it or not, you do what's called backmassing. In other words, line breeding is cumulative. So people only look at the first 3 generations. That's actually incorrect because if an ancestor is repeated several times in the pedigree, he is brought forward in the pedigree, like we discussed in the video called backmassing versus backbreeding.
Right.
We had a video like that, if you remember, and I
Hmm.
showed people how to read a pedigree. And then I showed a cousin strategy where they have the common grandfather or great grandfather, where if you repeat the same great grandparent often enough, 5, 6, 7 times, he becomes a super influencer. He becomes a bottleneck, but a desirable bottleneck.
Right.
In other words, inbreeding is cumulative. So when you're breeding in the family, and let's say you're breeding on this particular dog, well, you're not just inbreeding on that particular dog. You're inbreeding on what that dog carries, and
Right.
therefore,
Mhm.
by doing that dog, you're also inbreeding on everything that makes that dog up, which is
Mhm.
his parents and grandparents.
Yeah.
So in inbreeding on dog X, well, guess what? You're also inbreeding on dog's X's parents and grandparents as a consequence. So whether you
Mhm.
like it or not, that's just how genetics works. Now, so because she has so much consolidation of genes, it's called long runs of ancestry. long ROH chains.
Mm-hmm.
She's stamping type no matter what she's bred to. Now, I had another female a few years ago. I can't remember how many years ago, but whatever. She was not a very consolidated female. She was a very open pedigree female.
Mm-hmm.
The quality of the male determined the puppies because she was just a vessel passing the male's characteristics. But in a consolidated female, no matter the male, she determined the quality of the puppies.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a high quality female, you could breed her to a rock and still get good quality puppies.
All right. Or you call
It,
that prepotent, right?
prepotency, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so basically, the quality of the female, a high quality female, even when partnered with a weak male, will still produce high quality puppies. But the opposite is not true. A high quality male partnered with a weak female will not produce good puppies.
Mm.
And that's a fact.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So let me ask you this. Um, why use two branches or
I'll
two?
explain in a second. There's somebody at the door. I'll be right. Gotta give them pizza, the kids. The
I
kids.
know it.
Yeah.
All right.
So the answer is why two branches? Well, I'm going to show a PowerPoint of the exact method in a second, but to answer your question is there's two or three reasons of why there are two branches. Let me explain.
Okay.
In most breeding strategies, the focus is on the male, not on the female.
Mm-hmm.
So the strategy is carried forward by the father and his best son. In fact, that's how Brackett's formula works. The father and his best son is one line, one half, and the father's granddaughter is bred to that son.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 2-3 line breeding. So it's a male centric view, right? But in a female based strategies, the males are used in furtherance of the female. So it's the female you care about, not the male. So the male either complements the female or he doesn't. The reason you want a two rail approach is that you have sister one and sister two from the same mother, either they're full sisters or half sisters, and you try male one with sister one and male two with sister two. Let's say that male didn't work out. You cast them aside. You sell all those puppies, you keep none of it. You try again in the next heat. Same thing on this side. If this male with this sister didn't produce what you wanted, you cast them aside and you try the next heat. In other words, the males are used.
You just got a question. I was just writing down. You
Yeah.
just taking care of it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm
So
sorry.
the males are used whether they complement the female or not. If they don't, the puppies are sold and another male is tried in the next heat cycle. Now, the reason it's two is because if one rail collapses, the other rail still functions. For example, let's say you did a breeding with female one, sister one. Notice I'm using females
Mm-hmm.
as the two tracks, not males.
Right.
So it's daughters of that fantastic grandmother. Well, it's her mother, it's their mother, but she in the process becomes a grandmother as time goes on.
Mm-hmm.
So so what does each female have from their mother? Well, they have her X chromosome, right? Now they have the X chromosome from their father, but that X chromosome is from the father's mother.
Right.
So it's still a female based approach. It's still an
Yes.
X chromosome based approach. So when you have two females, which are daughters, they have two X's. This X is from their own mother, and this X is from the male partner of that mother, from that male's mother. So the male's mother is in that sister one, her father.
Mm-hmm.
His mother's X is in that female, and her own mother's X is in that female.
That's right.
In the other sister, it's her own mother's X is in that female, and that other male partner, his mother's X, or in other words, the grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
her X is in that female. Now, if one rail collapses, let's say one female gets sick and can no longer produce puppies, she gets pyometra, she gets injured, whatever, something happens. Then your entire breeding program is not stuck on one main line. You have two lines in parallel. So that's the first reason. The second reason is you create two rails. I'm going to explain how in a minute. And then you cross them. Now, what you're trying to do in a female based approach is you are actually accomplishing two other things in a female based approach, which may not be obvious. Let me explain. Somebody might say, well, why don't you just breed a mother to her son? Therefore, you have a female based approach.
Yeah.
Well,
Trying
it's
to make it
75% the mother and one quarter the father. Well, that's a terrible idea
work.
because you still carry the father no matter what. And you don't know the genetic problems of each side, which you now locked in. By using a two rail approach of the daughters of the female, let's say one female is a DM carrier, because the mother is,
Mm-hmm.
and she has one copy and one copy is clear. And let's say this female is an ATP7 carrier, but DM clear. So in this one, you got to not partner her with an ATP7 male and a DM clear male. In this one, you must not give her a DM carrier. She's a DM carrier.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, you must partner a non-carrier. Now, what's going to happen in the rail A? Well, in rail A, half the litter will be carriers, half will be clears. In rail B, half will be ATP7 carriers, half will be clear. Now you got to choose which clears from which side you're going to partner. Whereas in an inbreeding approach, you can't clean the line in the process. In other words, with a two rail approach, not only are you emphasizing the female, but you're cleaning up each rail,
Mm-hmm.
getting rid of the recessive trait. So you're getting all the good, but getting rid of the bad, because you're cleaning the blood of the bad cells.
Right.
So now you get a clear, you have carriers, that's fine. A carrier is fine, it doesn't develop the disease. For those who don't understand,
Mm-hmm.
a carrier doesn't develop the disease because the clear masks the carrier. But when you're line breeding, you are playing a dangerous game. It's a two-edged sword. You're amplifying all the good, but you're amplifying all the bad.
Yes, sir.
Two-edged sword. Now, you better do genetic testing if you're doing any kind of line breeding because now you have a higher chance of doubling up on bad genes. You better be willing to spend money on genetic testing. Well, somebody might say the following argument, well, the genetic testing is expensive. I have a solution for you.
Yeah. They want to hear this.
Yeah, this will save you money. So, solution is a two-step process. You're using bark for the mama and the papa dog, $135 each dog. Now you've spent 270, not that bad. And then use Gensol, which is only $30 for the test, but now you know specifically what to home in on. In other words, Embark is a broad test, 254 genes, any one of which can be bad. You don't know, so you need a wide swipe against the entire genome to know this dog has this, or only has one, or only has nothing. So you want a wide um, lane to understand everything that dog has. Now with Gensol, it's $30 per whatever you want to test. You want to test DM, $30, it'll tell you the dog is a DM carrier. Now let's say you got 9 puppies as an example. Now you spend $30 per puppy. 9 times 30 is $270. So you spend the same money across 9 as you would have spent on the two parent dogs. So the way to save money is doing bark on the mother and father and do Gensol on their kids.
Right.
Because now you know what you're aiming for. You've
Right.
identified that particular gene that you were worried about, and now you can ask Gensol to do that particular gene.
Mm-hmm.
And as opposed to spending 135 per puppy times 9 puppies, that will be over. That's almost $1,000. That's not
Good advice.
cost effective because you're not going to get that money back from the buyers.
Right.
They're not going to care that you went through all this genetic trouble. You're not going to get the
Mm-hmm.
money back. But if you're spending $300 for all 9 puppies, my example is 9 puppies, whatever, adjusted according to your numbers, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom line is that if you're keeping some for yourself, well, the only way to know is to know. You have to test all of them. And so the two rail approach So the first benefit is if one rail collapses, the other rail still functions.
Mm-hmm.
If that female gets sick, she can no longer, she must be spayed, or she breaks a leg and she then has a problem walking and you have to wait for her to heal until you've stitched the bone together. Whatever the case is, that mother is injured and cannot continue. Let's say now you have another rail to work with.
Mm-hmm.
That gives you a chance to continue your program. Number one. Number two, you can clean the blood of bad genes in your program because you've created enough clears from. So if you don't have a clear on this side, you'll have a clear on this side, but still have the same grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
So you now have a chance to create more puppies.
I can't hear you.
How about now?
Now I can hear you.
Oh my God, the button was mute. How much did I speak that you didn't hear?
Uh, I stopped you right when I told you I couldn't
Oh,
hear you. Yeah, it was right
okay.
there.
So everybody heard up until now, right? The audio
Right.
was okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought I would have to repeat all everything I
No, no,
said.
no. Oh no, no. You was good.
Oh,
Right
okay.
when you stopped, right when I couldn't hear you, I did like this. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I thought I don't have to repeat. Okay, got
No,
it.
you good. You good. Yeah.
Electronics, right?
Yeah.
So now, so the second advantage of a two-rail approach, as I said, is you have the ability to clean up your blood. That's the second advantage. The third advantage is you're able to raise the offspring to title them, and you're saying, well, from which male, using the same mothers with their sisters, where did I get the more athleticism, where I got better bounce back, better nerves? You can compare after they grow up.
Mhm.
What was the more athletic dog? What was the more obedient dog? What was the higher nerve threshold dog? So you have a chance to evaluate your offspring and isolate the female's influence from the male's influence. So this female, let's say sister one, with this particular male, let's say they're not very athletic and they're not very biddable. They're nervous. They're not, even though the male himself is not nervous, it's not what he is, it's what he throws. And what a dog throws is not himself, believe it or not. What a dog throws is the genetic package of his ancestors. For example, in Germany, that was called the ZW score. And
Mhm.
we spoke about this before.
Mhm.
Uh, a particular dog might have excellent hips and elbows, but his cousins and brothers and sisters have terrible hips and elbows.
Mhm.
Even though this particular dog is clean in terms of hips and elbows, he's not going to throw himself. He's going to throw the average of his family tree.
Gotcha.
That's what the
Yeah. I
ZW
remember
score is.
talking
And
about that.
that's true not just for hips and elbows, that's true as a whole. So basically, you can have people are chasing names. Well, if I breed this dope dog to this dope dog, I'm going to get dope puppies, right? Or another way to say it, well, I'm going to breed this champion to this champion. I should get champions, right?
Yeah, that's not breeding.
People, that's not how breeding works.
No.
Breeding works on the average of the genetic makeup of both parents.
Mhm.
You don't genetically pass titles, you pass genes.
That's right.
So if the world dog is a world champion, okay, he had the genetics to receive that degree of training. Nobody, no questions asked. But also he had a very excellent trainer. So how do you separate the human part, which is environmental, from the genetics part, which is not environmental? So how do you know what he will pass? So people think, well, if I take the champion to the champion, I breed best to best, surely I will get champions. That's flawed reasoning.
Mhm.
That's using Lamarck's theory, which was a contemporary of Charles Darwin, who
Mhm.
felt like if a giraffe stretches its neck, it will pass on a longer neck, but it doesn't happen that way.
Right.
Yeah. So basically, Lamarck was the competitor to Charles Darwin in the 19th century, and he was disproven. But the bottom line is Charles Darwin is talk about a slow accumulation of changes.
Mhm.
And so what? So to recap, the three advantages of two rail approaches: A, you get to see the result of what each rail produces with a different male. So sister one may be a fantastic dog, but with this particular male, it wasn't a good click. In the next breeding, she's partnered with a different male, and you see how it works out. So basically, you have a chance to fix your mistakes as you go. Whereas if you have one rail, that's your strategy, man. That's the only line you were thinking of, and that's the only way you're going, and there's no backing out because now that's the only cards you have in the game. You have no other cards in the game to play. So basically, it's cleans up the blood, gives you a chance to see that same female with different males what she produces, and only when you have the best possible outcome, then you combine the result of each rail, and that's the answer to your question.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
You want me to share my screen of this approach?
Please. Yeah, yeah. This yeah, let me see you go to work. I love when you pull them slides up. I'm a visual guy,
I come prepared,
as always.
as always, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So let me see if I can share the
While
screen.
he's pulling that up, guys, it's just a reminder. You can go to his page, Von Gunter Haas, my page. We have a ton of videos together on different breeding topics. Uh, I say Alexander is one of the best in the business. If you pull up anything about breeding, Google is gonna he gonna pop up for sure. Yeah,
I don't claim to be a scientist or anything like that. I'm just
yeah.
a experienced practitioner. Let me see if I pulled up, if I shared the right screen. You don't see a PowerPoint yet, do you?
No, sir, I don't see anything.
Okay, hold on. Save
Yeah, share
image
your screen.
file. Let me see if I think I'm not doing this right. One second. Share screen.
Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe to both channels. Please share our work. We're smaller channels. We kind of the heartbeat. Have you ever noticed like you can say something like you can have a show and then go all across the nation as a topic? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
All right. Does it work?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm gonna maximize. Tell me if you see everything. If there's a problem, let me know and I'll fix it.
Oh, everything's look wonderful.
All right. So this is a two-rail approach. Now remember, in this approach, you're not creating a prepotent dog, which is what the male approach is.
Hmm.
You're creating a prepotent family of dogs. So it's a difference between line breeding and creating a prepotent dog versus creating a prepotent family of dogs.
Hmm.
With this approach, you will create a family you can be proud of, not just a prepotent single individual. All right.
That's right.
So now, what is what are we aiming at? Well, natural selection includes survival of the fittest, of who reproduces and who doesn't, and traits spread slowly through populations, and random genetic recombination happens. Artificial selection, man-made selection, human-controlled mating decisions. Specific traits are intentionally concentrated. Breeding decisions determine future genetics. Nature selects for survival. Breeders select for traits, as I'm sure all of you know. So now, the two rails is a female-based approach and later crossed, allows for evaluation before consolidation, and best for creating a prepotent family rather than a single individual, as I just said.
Hmm.
Line breeding is a ratchet effect, the fastest way to bring forth results. That was written by Jay Lush, by the way.
Jay Lush.
Yeah, 1934, he wrote a very good book. It's still available. I recommend people buy it. Okay, so why does line breeding exist? As I said, breeding best to best doesn't guarantee consistent offspring because genetics recombine randomly. I explained that about autosomal genes a little earlier.
Hmm.
Champion times champion still produces variation, and traits must be concentrated in order to become predictable. What does line breeding create? It creates genetic concentration, predictability, and family type. Titles are not inherited, genetics are. So let's see what the risk versus reward we get. In line breeding, the reward is predictable structure, strong family resemblance, and genetic concentration. The risk is inbreeding depression, reduced fertility, and bottleneck effect. In other words, you can't keep line breeding, line breeding, line breeding, and line breeding. You will reach a bottleneck and then you will exhaust your, even if you don't produce disease, you will still create no fertility. So at some point you have to,
Smaller litters and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, you can't keep your blood that tight forever. You gotta
Hmm.
let it breathe and then come back into your line.
Hmm.
Mitigation tools, genetic testing for the embark, gensol, hip and elbow testing, and strategic outcrosses, as I said. And you have to think in terms of generations, not like this dog is an extreme big head and this dog is muscular. I noticed that in the bully community. Everybody is looking for that big stud with that big head, that big muscle, and that's the hot ticket of the moment.
Hmm.
But that's not how you breed dogs. You must breed in thinking in generationally, not what is hot in that moment, which will make me the biggest sale and give me the biggest money.
Hmm.
Are those extreme traits? Now you got to think generationally. All right, well, let's talk about the difference in the strategy. In the male, as I said, the focus is the stud dog, and sons propagate the line. Females act as a genetic carrier. In a female strategy, the focus is the dam. Daughters carry the line because daughters carry the female's eggs. Males are rotated to support the female line, as I just explained. A
Hmm.
good one is rotated in, a bad one is rotated out until you get what you want. Key differences: male line is stud driven, female line is family driven. All right, we understood that. So, how does this work? What are the mechanics of how this works? First of all, what goals are we trying to accomplish? Why are we doing this in the first place? Well, first, you're trying to accomplish performance based breeding. In the German Shepherd, you're trying to accomplish good grip, good nerve, not fear biters, not over, not neurotic like the Malinois, which is very neurotic.
Hmm.
You're not trying to accomplish hyper dogs, you're trying to accomplish stable dogs. And you're trying to create a heritage breed which will perpetuate the best qualities of the breed. Your goal is to create a better example of the breed, not just
Hmm.
any dogs will do, anyhow. And you have a reliable way to pass mitochondrial DNA and it avoids the founding sire effect because there is no founding sire. There's a founding dam.
That's right.
You can then use outside stock. You could then use champion blood sires, knowing your dam is secured and you have an excellent dam line. Now you can introduce, once that line has been sufficiently tightened, then you can introduce a lot of male power and still get good results. But when you don't have a tightened female line, that male will not pass through that female in a very good way. It's just going to be pot shot results.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Why build a line from a female? Well, genetic bottlenecks are introduced with a male. Why? Because when the same male is across a lot of females, hundreds of females, he becomes the bottleneck. It becomes the founding sire effect. And the entire population descends from only a few males.
Hmm.
By contrast, a female based approach spreads the risks across multiple generations, maintains mitochondrial DNA lineage, creates epigenetic influence of nursing, and creates a strong nervous system imprinting good nerves,
Hmm.
builds a family and not just a famous stud. Males create, male lines create famous studs. Female lines create families.
Yeah.
So now how does this strategy work? Let's
Mhm.
explain. I'm going to do it in 2 slides, and each slide is like builds more detail than the previous slide has. So this is what we're going to do. We have a famous sire. In my case, it's Karl van Brandenburg,
Mhm.
the son of Yukon van Perot. Okay, that's my dogs, but I'm not showing it with my names. I'm showing it generically.
Right.
So famous sire one creates the foundation dam. So the first thing we have to have is a tremendous foundation dam. She has to be a good mother. She has to have the structure of this famous sire, the working ability of her sire, the temperament of her sire. Otherwise, she's not worth being line bred on. She's nothing special. She's just a female.
Absolutely.
So you need a excellent female, which is the daughter of an excellent male and grand male. That's the thing I wanted to emphasize on this leg of the drawing. Now, she's bred to two different fathers at two different points of time, producing half sister B and half sister A. They have the same mom but different dads. Now, over here in the corner, I created a stud male. descended from the same common ancestor. In my case, I've imported a dog named Winston van Perot from the famous Perot kennel in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
His grandfather is Wukan van Perot, the 2016 world champion, and he's a 4-4 line breeding on Yukon van Perot, the three-time Bundesprogen champion, 2008, 2010, 2012. So this is a different line of ancestry, a different ROH chain. ROH is runs of inheritance. That's what ROH means. So he has a different ROH line of inheritance back to this famous great grandsire, and I wrote him on the side here. Now let's make the picture a little bit more complicated. So now this is how it actually is. I'm using my dogs, but it could be any dogs. Adapt what I'm saying to your own situation.
Mm-hmm.
So Jake was bred to a foundation dam to produce half sister B. Jago, an unrelated male, was bred to foundation dam to produce half sister A. So two different papas,
Okay.
same mother, makes them half siblings. Two different fathers but the same mother. These are half siblings. Now, there's another path of inheritance I want to show. Jake, through Born van Volschried, also goes back to this common great grandsire. And Caro, the dam's father, also goes to this common great grandsire. So in this half sister, there are two paths to this common great grandsire. Through Jake, which is her father,
Mm-hmm.
Jake goes to Born, and Born goes to Yukon. So that's one path through her sire back to Yukon. But through the mother,
Yeah, to the dam.
right. So this becomes a 3-3 on Yukon in the parents,
Uh-huh.
making this a 4-4. If it's 3-3 in the parent, it's 4-4 in the next generation and a 5-5 in the next generation. In other words, the number increases by one every generation. In other words, if it's a grandfather for me, it's a great grandfather for my child, right? So it's the same concept in dogs. So we have two paths of inheritance to this great grandsire,
Mm-hmm.
but on purpose, this is more open, and there is no
I
path.
see that. Yeah.
This
Why,
is
why why is that? Why Jago though?
well, Jago is a Schutzen 3 male that belongs to a friend of mine. He's all
Okay.
black.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted all black because Caro is all black and Yukon is all black. So phenotypically, I knew that Bailey carries black because her father is black,
Mm-hmm.
her grandfather is black. So half of these litters are always black because I chose a black male.
Right.
So I want the outcome when I cross the rails to become black. It doesn't
Okay.
have to be, but I would prefer it
Right.
because phenotypically it'll resemble this great grandsire.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
not only am I developing a line breeding on this female, but I'm also simultaneously trying to push forward this great grandfather at the same time. So it's kind of a dual agenda in my situation, but it may
Mm-hmm.
not be in your situation. But in my situation, I have a triple goal. Number one, to clean the blood. Number two, to emphasize this bitch. And number three, to emphasize her grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of I'm leading up to that. So now here's what happens next.
Okay.
So first things first, what are your non-negotiables? Your non-negotiables in both rails are you must evaluate separately the offspring of both sisters. In my case, half sisters. They must be health tested. They must be hip and elbow tested. They must be selected for phenotype. I'm going to select top line and color as my main phenotypical traits I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And they must be selected for nerve. Well, that comes from bite work. When you put the dog under pressure, is he hectic or is he calm on the grip? That applies to German Shepherds. It
Mm-hmm.
may not apply to other breeds, but this is very important. Otherwise, you're going to have fear biters. So you must stress the dog to see how, or if they're a puppy, you drop a ball and see if the puppy gets afraid of it and doesn't bounce back. If it gets startled but then relaxes and comes to explore, that's good nerve. If a puppy startles and never bounces back, that's bad nerve. Even as a puppy, you can tell when there's weak nerves. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
those are your key non-negotiables. You must genetically test. You must temperament test. You must health test. You must hip and elbow test. and you must make the partner similar phenotype to create some kind of a similar look. Otherwise, you don't have a line. They look too random. Now, so what are we going to accomplish? Step one is to widen the pedigree, not tighten the pedigree.
Gotcha.
Now, most male-based programs start off tightening right away. You're starting an inbreeding path right away. In a female-based strategy, first you're going to open up the lungs and let the lungs breathe. You're going to let the pedigree breathe, and then you're going to tighten it. In a male-based strategy, you tighten it right away. Now, so what am I explaining here? Well, Winston is Bella's second cousin. In other words, it's a 4-4 on Yukon. In other words, his great grandfather, Yukon, twice, 4-4, two paths to Yukon. Bella is also two paths, one path to Yukon. So this is 3 4s on Yukon, 4-4-4-4. Three times in the fourth position. Okay, so that's rail A. Now, because they're second cousins, they're not that closely related. Second cousins are only mildly related.
Mm-hmm.
So second cousins is what? 8 great grandparents. So he's one out of 7 other great grandparents. And there's parents, and there's through gene recombination, you have a hell of a lot of other dogs involved. So this gene pool, they're practically unrelated. In other words, they're second cousins, true, but it's not their grandfather which is common, it's their great grandfather which is common.
Mm-hmm.
So you're opening up the pedigree. Initially widens, but then narrows. In this situation, again, we're using Winston or another male. I happen to have Winston, but another breeder may have another male. So you don't have to use the same male. You could use Winston with this sister and another male with this sister.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, because I'm consolidating to this dog, I want Winston because he also is related to this dog, and I wrote that over here. Descended from the same ancestor via a different path. Mother, Zasha van Perot. In other words, he goes back to Yukon not through Caro, but through a different path. So since my goal is not just to create a bitch-based line, but I also want to create a line breeding on this dog, that's why I'm using Winston. But from
Gotcha.
a strategy sense, you don't have to do it this way. You could do male X with sister B, male Y with sister A, and that's okay because it's the sister's relationship that you carry about, not the male relationship you carry. In my case, I'm doing it that way because I have a dual goal. I'm trying to create a Perot-based dog in the U.S. It will not be a Perot line; it will be my line. But the idea is to reinforce the common great grandfather via different ROH blocks. So had he gone to Yukon through Caro, he's the same ROH block. But because he goes through Yukon not through Caro, he's a different ROH block. In other words, he's a different chain of common homogeneous genes, but through a different ancestor.
Gotcha.
So this widens the pedigree for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what are we going to do?
Coefficient.
Well, rail A will be 4-4 through rail A and 4-4 through rail B. And for those of you who remember our earlier videos, 3-3 is first cousins, 4-4 is second cousins, 5-5 is third cousins. Now, so 4-4 is second cousins for those who remember the earlier video. This reinforces the chosen ancestor while avoiding extremely close mating. So in the close mating, that's half siblings, first cousins. Those are tight. Uncle to niece, those are tight. But twice is a fourth position common great grandfather, big deal. It's only 1/256th of the total genes, which is practically nothing.
Mm.
So he carries that common great grandfather, but he's so unrelated. In most respects, this is like an outcross breeding, even though technically it's not. Now we're gonna do the magic. We're gonna take the F2 generation, which is the rail A daughter, and marry her to the rail B son, and we're gonna take the rail B daughter and mail her to the rail A son. Goal: 2-3 line breeding on the foundation dam on both sides using half uncle to niece from one side to the other. This effectively makes the puppies 3-4 on foundation A and 3-4 on foundation B, or
Mm.
3-3-4-4-4. Remember we spoke about back massing and increasing that particular ancestor.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah.
By increasing him so many times and repeating him so many times, we're making him further up in the pedigree.
The
Now,
front. Yeah.
how does this work? Well, this is an alternative method. I'm not going to go into the alternative. I'll come back to the slide.
Okay.
Now, is phenotype matching important? Yes.
Yeah.
Male partner must match the female in color, top line, head shape, physical ability, and temperament. Although the female is the foundation of the line rather than the focus on line breeding itself, her phenotype matters because if she's completely different from the male, the traits of the male will not be passed. And you don't want that. To make a line, it has to be recognizable. Otherwise, the dogs look random and they don't look like a line. So to
Hmm.
be a line, you must have a phenotypical similarity in appearance. Okay, how does this method increase heterozygosity? That's a very important point because when you're line breeding, you are taking a risk by increasing the COI. Yes, you're increasing prepotency, but you're increasing risk because the higher the COI, the higher the risk. Well, how does this method increase heterozygosity, which is the opposite of risk? It's variability. Heterozygosity you can think of as variability. By using a male partner that is second cousin across two parallel female rails, it widens rather than tightens the pedigree. This approach introduces a different chain of homogeneous genes rather than concentrating them immediately, which generally increases heterozygosity before moving fundamentally toward line breeding goals. In other words, by using a distant relative as the male partner to each female, it increases heterozygosity because we let the breeding population breathe because that male is not that related to those females except in the fourth
Which
position.
which heterogrosity. Say that word again. I'm sorry.
Heterozygosities,
Okay. So
heterozygosity,
hybrid vigor.
hybrid vigor,
Yeah.
exactly,
Okay.
hybrid vigor.
Yeah.
So now, so we are, it's lower risk than immediate close inbreeding. Okay, and if one rail collapses, the other one continues the breeding program. All right, so a quick COI of both of this strategy. Let's do a kind of a math check-in as we go.
Okay.
So the initial background line breeding is a rail A, 4-4 and key ancestor. Rail B is a 4-4 and key ancestor. After cross consolidation, the increase of the female becomes 37.5% coefficient of relationship, and a quarter of that is the coefficient of inbreeding. Equivalent approximately to a 3-line breeding on the female from both sides. This causes double 3-4. In other words, if she's a 2-3, her kids after her are therefore a 3-4. You see how that works?
Yeah.
Two becomes a 3 and the 3 becomes a 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
Increased predictability, reinforced family traits, avoids extreme inbreeding.
Yeah.
Now, how does that look visually? So this is
Clean. Yeah. I see.
clean, right? So you
Yeah.
have one rail right here, you have another rail right here,
Mhm.
and you're going to cross the rails. How does that work? Well, here's the foundation female over here, and here the foundation female is over here. Okay, she has a daughter here and a daughter here. The common male, in this case Winston, is used in both cases.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be the same male. It could be
Mhm.
two different males to increase heterozygosity. I simply have an ulterior motive. I want to increase the great grandfather too. But
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be your goal. That's just simply my goal. Okay, so this could be two unrelated males. In my case, it's the same male. Final cross, you cross rail B with rail A. In other words, how does that look? Well, let's explain.
Alexander, before you go into that,
Yeah,
I want to ask you this question because I asked this question to a lot of people, and I'm thinking I'm seeing it right here in the last slide.
yeah,
So hybrid vigor can be maintained in a
right.
family of dogs.
It can be, but you have to think what you're doing. And let me explain. So
Okay.
yes, so initially it's widens, then we're going to tighten. But let me explain how we're going to tighten and how we're not going to tighten because there's two ways
Okay.
of doing it. And let's talk about that.
Okay. Let's do it.
Now, Bella, I'm using my own dog's names because it's easier for me to draw using my own dog's names.
Yes, sir.
Bella, Bella has a full brother whose name is Thor.
Okay.
So their father is Jago, meaning that was rail B. Father was Jago. Okay. And Frazier has a full brother named Kaiser. Father was Jake. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, if I take the daughter out of Bella and Winston, right?
Mhm.
This is the daughter from Bella. I mean, in other words, this is Bella's daughter.
Yeah.
This is Frasia's daughter. Here's Frasia. This is her daughter. Now, if I breed Frasia's daughter to Frasia's brother, this is Frasia's full brother.
Mm-hmm.
That who is that brother with respect to her daughter? That's her full uncle, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That's her full brother of the mother. So her daughter is a niece
Uncle Denise. Yeah.
to her full brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing on this side. Bella's daughter that she had with Winston. I'm not showing Winston here, but he was the father.
Mm-hmm.
So Bella with Winston produced a Bella daughter. Bella's daughter, if bred to Thor, Thor is Bella's full
Step
brother. Who is Thor with respect to Bella? Her full brother. Who is Thor with respect to Bella? He's her full uncle, right?
uncle. Yeah. Uh-huh.
But instead of doing that, I'm going to do the opposite uncle.
Okay.
I'm going to take Thor, whose father is Jago, and breed him to Frasia's daughter. So he's a half uncle. And I'm going to take Kaiser, which is a half brother to Bella, not a full brother to Bella, and I'm going to breed him to Bella's daughter. So rather bring to the full uncle, I'm going to breed to the half uncle from the opposite rail.
Give
Now,
yourself room to breathe. I see what you're doing.
right now, why would this be important? If I do it this way, what am I concentrating on? I'm concentrating on Bailey and Jago equally, right?
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Because this is the daughter of Bailey. Bella is the daughter of Bailey. Frazier is the daughter of Bailey. So Bailey is a 2-3. She's a grandmother on the one. So Bella is her daughter. That's a 2. And 3 because she becomes the grandmother of Bella's kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes 2-3 on Bailey, but it's also a 2 or 3 on Jago.
Jago. Yeah. You'll be
Right?
concentrating mostly on
I'm
Jago.
concentrating both. I'm concentrating Bailey
Uh-huh.
and Jago here,
Uh-huh.
and the exact logic over here. It'll be
On
2-3
Jake.
on Bailey and a 2-3 on Jake.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not passing Bailey. I'm passing Bailey and her male partner
Mm-hmm.
in the first time she was bred, and Bailey and her male partner in the second time. Am I concentrating Bailey? No, I'm concentrating Bailey and Jago equally
Mm-hmm.
on this side, and I'm concentrating Bailey and Jake equally on this side.
Mm-hmm.
Each male becomes a 2-3 also. But by using the half uncle technique, well, Jago is the father of Thor, but he has nothing to do with Frasier. Frasier is the daughter of Jake, not Thor, which is the daughter of Jago. So by using the opposite uncle, in other words, the half brother. So who's Thor with respect to Frasier? He's her half brother.
Mm-hmm.
They share the same mom, but not the same dad. Opposite
Oh.
opposite logic here. Who is Kaiser with respect to Bella? He's her half uncle. He shares her mom, but not her dad.
Still working that mitochondrial.
Still
Still
now,
working.
now we're still only passing Bailey.
Yes.
No more passing because we've crossed the half uncle, not the full uncle. Now we're only at 2-3 on Bailey. Forget about Jago and Jake. They're now out of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Now that outcome is a female-based line. So even though males are used to make the babies,
Mm-hmm.
males are not perpetuated by using the opposite half uncle.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the key to the whole idea. The key to the whole idea is you create a daughter on this side, a daughter on this side. You breed her to whatever male is the most phenotypically similar, which is high quality, good prey drive, good grip, good nerves, whatever your criteria is.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's been health tested, everybody's been genetically tested. Those are non negotiable gates.
Mm-hmm.
That's your first rail. Then you do the same thing, either the same male or a different male. But in my case, I have a secondary goal, but that's not necessarily the person watching this video will have that secondary goal. I have that secondary goal, but the person watching may not have. So I'm using Winston, but I don't have to use Winston. It could have been a different male, right? Now, so you take sister one with male one. That's it. Let's assume that breeding was a good one. If not, next heat cycle, you'll do another male until you get what you want. In other words, you're not forced to use that male, but you are forced to use that female.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is passed on the X chromosome of the sisters, which have a common mother. The male can be discarded at will if he doesn't produce with that female what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a female centric approach. Now,
Right.
they have kids, right? They have kids. Now, each sister in the rail system has a brother. She has a full brother, and she on this side has a half brother. And the same thing's true on this side. This sister has a full brother, and on this side has a half brother. So you're using 4 dogs to concentrate that mother. You're using 2 daughters and 2 sons to reinforce that female. Now you're coming in from 4 sides, passing that female. You have intense concentration of the female without inbreeding.
I see that. Yeah, I see that.
And
I
you have
see what you.
and you have X from all the sides coming in,
Hmm.
X chromosome from all sides.
Right, right.
That's the whole idea. Now, this is a sophisticated idea.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I
This
was
is not a
looking at.
simple simple inbreeding.
Yeah, yeah. I was looking at something. If you wanted to be a little bit more aggressive with that, say you had two half sisters and maybe use the same male. Is that an option too?
Well, that's exactly my example.
Yeah,
We have
yeah,
sisters in the same male.
yeah.
Now, people will say, well, wait a second. Also, aren't you creating a line on Winston too, since he was the male in both half sisters?
Hmm.
Yes, he becomes a 3-3 in the outcome. So he becomes a grandfather on both sides. That's true. But the mother, which is the mother of these two females, becomes a 2-3 on this side and a 2-3 on this side. And you have a 2-3 twice, becomes a 2-3-2-3. Means
Hmm.
the puppies are 3-4-3-4. So it's 3-3, first cousins. And so they're simultaneously first cousins and second cousins twice.
Right, right,
And then, but they're not half siblings.
right. That's pretty slick. Yeah, that's pretty slick,
And
Alexander.
only X chromosomes get passed.
Yeah.
Well, not only X, but I mean the X passes from 4 lanes. It's a
So,
4 lane highway to pass the X chromosome.
so you know what you just did, right?
No, I don't know
You
what I
just
did.
gonna cause people to change their thinking on what to start with. They probably not gonna start with male or female. They're gonna start with two females now, which I would do. I always believe in starting with two females. I don't keep a lot of studs. I got, you
Right.
know, I work off other kennels. My
Yeah.
cousin's kennel and things like that.
Right.
He can hold more dogs. I can't, so I can
I have
just
a limited amount of space, and I
right.
maybe at some point I'll have a bigger property. I'm
Mhm.
maybe moving to some other state in the
Right.
future as I retire.
Yeah.
I'm at that age where I gotta start thinking about these things.
Yeah. You got to come to the south.
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe we become neighbors.
Yeah. It's good living down here in Arkansas, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, yeah, the cost of living is less. What I'm saying is that this strategy I'm explaining actually has been historically done
Mhm.
several times. In fact, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
If you go back to the Martin brothers, the Wienerau kennel and the Arminius kennel, for those who don't know, uh, they were the head of the SV, the Bereichsschäferhund, the German Shepherd Felix Society, the parent breed club of the German Shepherd in Germany. One was a breeder and one was a judge. All of today's show lines come from these two men who were brothers. In the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, their dogs created what we call now the show line, with the slow back, and it wasn't as bad back then, and the overarched spine and the rear paws practically down to the ground as they trot along. That came from these two men. So if you want to blame anybody for the downfall of the German Shepherd, you can probably blame the Martin brothers in the 1970s and what they did. But anyhow, I digress. That's my own little pet peeve.
Mhm.
Maybe people will disagree with me. Maybe a showline breeder will disagree with me.
Mhm.
Maybe they'll think they were the best thing since sliced bread.
Hmm.
I'm a working line breeder. I'm giving you my opinion. Now, Canto Wienerau and Quanto Wienerau. Quanto was used as, even though he's a show line, was wound up being used in the DDR dogs.
Mhm.
He was actually a very nice dog with very good nerves. Canto was kind of a weak nerve dog, but that's not the point of this conversation. So you had two brothers, Canto and Quanto, which were bred to multiple females, and then the outcomes were crossed with each other. So it wasn't two sisters, it was two brothers. But the idea of a two lane highway then crossed back to each other was done in the 1970s with Canto and Quanto.
Okay.
All the showline German Shepherds are derived from Canto Wienerau and Quanto Arminius, I believe his name is. And so this two rail approach of using siblings to create rail A and rail B, now I'm using females, but it was done with two males. In
Hmm.
the Fox Terrier, this approach was used using females.
Hmm.
So this has been historically done. This is not new information.
Right. Right.
This is simply people are so focused on males that they forget that there's other strategies. And well, I am trying to create educational content whereby people say, well, what is the strategy? Well, people sometimes can't get past the point of simple inbreeding. 25% this, 25% that. This is not simple inbreeding. This is line breeding where genetic testing is using to mitigate risk.
Hmm.
That is the strategy.
Hmm. Yeah. Cleaning them lines as you go.
Yeah,
Hey, great. Yeah. Great topic tonight.
thank you.
Let me ask you something.
Right.
You know, you're going to attract more of the scientific crowd, the more the I'd say more like people like me. We want to nerd it out with you,
Very
right?
good nerds. Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah. We want to nerd it out with you.
right.
What are some resources? I know you're a very studious man. Like you was talking about Jay Lush. What other kind of people do you recommend? Because I know like Jay Lush was a well, like a cattle guy.
Yeah, he
Dairy
did.
farmer. Yeah,
He wrote a book and they first let's step up a second. Who the hell Jay Lush was? Jay
yeah.
Lush
Let's talk about that. Yeah.
was hired. It's interesting how the U.S. Agricultural Department winds up hiring mathematician because if you look at back at my first video with you about civil right
Hmm.
and the civil rights coefficient of inbreeding, which was the first formula that was written, Hardyman's equation came later, and embarked by COI came in after that. But
Hmm.
the concept of a COI was developed by civil right
Hmm.
because the cow herds were being too inbred. The way the cow herds were being bred was called the circular method. The circular method is you have one bull and you have 8 cows, and you follow the clockwise direction of breeding this bull to this cow,
Hmm.
the next cow, and it's called the clockwise breeding method. That was what they used in farms with bulls. Now, the inbreeding deficiency got so high, milk production was high, low, weight of the cow was low. When it came time to slaughter for meat for market, a cow which was too skinny and not enough milk or not enough meat was not giving a good yield to the farmer. So he was hired, civil right, to come up with an index of how much risk is too much risk because they were using this circular method of inbreeding called clockwise breeding. It's called, one
Hmm.
bull across 8 cows in a circle,
Hmm.
clockwise circle. That was the 1930s method. Nobody uses that anymore, but that was the method they did in the 1930s. Now, so we had a mathematician apply an approach, which is what resulted that. Now, Lush was another mathematician, in fact, a statistician, and he created a formula called. Let me double check the formula. But there's a formula where he measured. It had to be measurable, and the goal was, well, how much gallons of milk a cow produced. Let's say one cow produced 10,000 gallons of milk a year. Another cow produced 11,000 gallons of milk per year.
Hmm.
Or let's say a swine was 465 pounds and another swine was 562 pounds. When it came to slaughter the swine for bacon and food, which swine yielded the best economic value to the farmer, right?
Hmm.
So he developed a statistical approach. He was the father of genetics across the entire genome. In other words, he was not looking at your yard.
Hmm.
He was the father of
Like population.
population genetics. He
Okay.
was the
Gotcha.
first one.
Mhm.
And so he created a statistical model, but it had to be measurable qualities. This approach would be hard to use in dog breeding because a lot of things you look for a dog, like willingness to please. Well, how do you quantify that?
Right. Right.
But with a cow, how much milk she makes in
Scrap that.
gallons, you can quantify it, right?
Uh-huh.
So he created a statistical model. We maybe can cover it next time. It's up to you.
Yeah.
which explains how to increase the average, to increase the genetic average of the herd toward the higher yields. Now, in this book written in 1934 by Jay Lush, this idea of a two-rail approach is written in that book.
Mm.
And of course, what works in cows works in dogs too. And he got rid of the circular breeding approach, in fact.
Mm. Gotcha. Gotcha.
It's if you ever like if you like math and you like I mean this is not high school level math, this is like college level math. If you like, I
Hmm.
mean I have a degree in physics, so statistics was one of the classes I took, obviously. So
Hmm.
but most people will not follow unless they had a statistics class. Now, that's not to say they can't follow it if they read it. It's an easy read, but the finer points are understood if you understand statistics. So Jay Lush's book is not a quick read. It's a book. If you understand statistics, you will understand this book. So I if people want to buy it, it's still available in the thrift bookstore.
Hmm.
It's like $10. It's very cheap. But if you want to read about mathematical approach to breeding dogs, cows, or any other mammal, Jay Lush would I recommend. Who would I also recommend? I would recommend Carmen Battaglia.
Yeah. Yeah.
He basically rewrote Brackett's formula in a more digestible
Right.
form.
Man,
He's a good author.
we need to get him. Man, we need to get him, brother.
He's getting old, so
Yeah, I know. I talked to him. I talked to him about a year ago, and I said, I said,
yeah, yeah, that would be
"Son, yeah, we need to
that's a
do it."
very influential
I'm,
person.
I'm gonna have to make some calls to make that one happen and
Yeah,
see if
he's
he
a
can. Yeah,
very
because
influential.
he's
You
getting
know
on
what
the.
else he's influential? But there was a program called the Super Dog Program
Hmm.
run by the U.S. military, and it's called ENS,
Hmm.
Early Neurological Stimulation. And he, showed that if you tickle the feet with a little ear cleaner, what do you call it?
Yeah, the Q-tip in between the toes.
Q-tip,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and then you
Yeah, he did.
walk
Yeah.
on a cold surface for a
Yeah.
minute, or you put them upside down.
Right.
He showed
Right.
that our early neurological stress,
Yeah. Hmm.
the body will adapt to make a stronger animal. So he was also a proponent of ENS.
Right.
He's one of the first ones to talk about it,
Yes. Yes.
and he's a scientist.
Man, he the man. He the
He's the
man.
man. Yeah,
Yeah.
he made a lot of contributions to the genetic study of dogs and animal care, and he's a German
Yeah.
Shepherd breeder, by the way, himself.
Right. Right. When I
Although he
talk.
breeds American Show so
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
a little bit offended. No, I'm just kidding.
When I talked to him, he said, I know your show. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying? He didn't say it was good or bad, but he said it is very necessary.
well, that tells you it's good.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah. So I
he's
was like,
yeah,
bet. Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah.
It's a
So you
very
never know
necessary
who's
show.
watching. You know what I mean? Mhm.
I think my channel and your channel has elevated the conversation
I
in the
think so
dog
too.
world. I think
Yeah.
that a lot of channels are about puppy tricks or cuteness or cute
Mhm.
puppy videos. About a lot of channels on breeding and training, either whether it's pet
Yeah.
level training or competition level training.
Yeah.
There's a lot of debate on the training channels versus pure
Mhm.
positive versus correction based
Mhm.
versus in the middle, which is balanced training. I myself believe in balanced training,
Yes, sir.
and I don't believe in the Kohler method, like correct the dog. Has to respect you. There has to be an antecedent. The dog has to know why it wants to work for you.
Mhm.
Nobody goes to work without a paycheck. And what's the dog's paycheck? Food, toy, and praise. No dog will work without a paycheck. You have to give the dog a paycheck. But the bottom line is that all those channels regarding training are basically I see nothing but debate between the pure positive crowd and the balanced training crowd. Now I fall into the balanced training crowd because I train myself. But the bottom line is those channel they don't talk about the ownership of dogs that the way the average person experiences their dog. They talk about training or they talk about cute puppy videos. But I think your channel in particular exposes the industry, how do breeders think, how do
Mhm.
breeders talk, how
Mhm.
to approach a breeder, what is an ethical breeder versus a non-ethical breeder,
Mhm.
what are the standards for ethical breeding of animals, how do you handle a puppy application, what about puppy contracts. Those are the nuts and bolts that people need the curtain peeled back and to understand the breeder
Right.
who is putting their heart and soul into their puppies.
Right.
And in today's world, we're being castigated as if we're evil by the adopt don't shop crowd.
Yes.
And we had a show about that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think we're far from evil. I think if it wasn't for breeders and love of animals, we wouldn't have our pure breed dogs.
Hmm.
And I think anybody who tries to mischaracterize breeders is just doing a disservice to dogs, not just to people. And I
Right.
think you elevated the conversation,
Yeah.
in
It's
my
been
opinion.
Yeah, yeah, I thank you. It's been a really good journey. A lot of people started out with me. All you guys that came and brought perspective because I don't want to control people's minds, but I do want to make you think. And I think we have made people start doing that. And I think it's some other good channels out there.
True.
Yeah, I try to have tunnel vision so I can keep my creative side open on real questions. Doug the same way. So some stuff we just don't watch, but it is some stuff that like your channel, Alexander, you've been going crazy.
I went from 3,000 to 5,000
Real
subscribers
quick. Yeah, that's what happened to
very
me.
quickly, and I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what happened to me. I had 7,000, then I jumped to 8,000 real quick.
yeah.
But yeah, I think
And
channels
people,
like
hopefully, you will subscribe and like this video and share it.
yeah, yeah, please,
I
yeah.
mean, it's
But
worth
it's
mentioning that.
it's
Yeah,
some tremendous other channels out there too. It's a Better Breeders. It's Laura Reeves, her channel, Pure Breed. That's who I. That's
right,
who I look to.
right.
Not in competition, but
For inspiration, I think also
inspiration
has
and
to,
learning. Yeah, hmm,
I think what has to happen is a shift of mindset. Breeders are
yeah,
not in competition with each other.
that's right.
Breeders should be in cooperation with each other
That's right.
because we have enough to face with the negativity of the adopt don't shout crowd
Hmm.
or the no tools crowd. If you remember, we did a show showing that the very same people who are behind the no tools, no prong collars, no e-collars, are the very same people who are the adopt don't shop. And those two things may be separate topics, adopt don't shop versus tools, but
Hmm.
it's the same extremists which are pushing both agendas. And I
Yes,
think
sir.
and
Yes,
I
sir.
think that is we as breeders need to peel back the curtain, explain who we are, what we do. We're ordinary people, but who we are as people outside of dog breeding, your sense of ethics, your sense of morality.
Hmm. That's from the bottom to the top,
That is what
all the way
right,
up to the breed clubs.
right,
They need accountability as well.
correct. And I
Especially
think
certain ones of them.
should remain
Yeah,
nameless,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I'll leave
Yeah.
it.
But
But
I think we're not in. I mean, if you notice my channel, I never criticized any other YouTube channel,
well,
even if I disagreed with them.
yeah, but
Now,
that
I
should
try to
never
stay
happen.
away from that.
Yeah, but that happens. That's the entertainment value of people wanting to compete and not in it for the right reasons. It's
Right,
more for themselves when they
right.
worried about because I do my best work when my eyes are straightforward, And we always been like that, Alexander.
I
Hey Joe,
agree with
might need to cover, we might need to talk about this. Not not building channels based off friendship, agendas, and influence of bigger breeders and things on your channel. We
you.
don't
No,
do this. We don't do that at all. Yeah,
I just try to do the most honest job I can, presenting
that's right.
information as best as I can. I
100%.
don't claim to be a geneticist. I'm not.
That's right.
I have a good understanding of math. I can tell you that
Yeah,
much.
you do, boy.
And
Let me hire you as my accountant. No. Yeah.
but I try to present things in a somewhat scientific way,
Yes, sir.
and I try to also. I'm not really an entertainment channel. I'm not a very entertaining guy, but I hope I'm an informative guy,
Yeah,
and I
you're
hope
informative.
people.
Hey, you're informative. Hey, I know you being humble and everything, but man, Alexander, just the last few years, your work is going to be hard to match. It's respected. It's respected because
Oh, I hope so.
you put a lot of thought. It ain't just talking. You just really proving your points for years. It's respected, highly respected.
Well, thank you. I
Mhm.
appreciate it. I
Yes, sir.
I try to prepare for a show and try to provide value in every episode.
Every time you nail it. Every
Yeah,
time you nail it. Yeah.
I try.
Well, Alexander, it's just been another. Uh, great collaboration. I hope to continue, and
Absolutely.
I appreciate it,
I
brother.
always have fun coming to this show. I really do.
I'm a fun guy.
You are.
Okay.
Because your goodness and ethics comes through, and that's what makes people come to you.
Well, yeah. Well,
You can't fake that.
no, you can't fake it on the screen, man. I ain't no perfect man, but man, just down through you, I just try to work on my character and just be real.
Yeah.
That's all we gotta do. Yeah.
When you see a TV show for dog breeders and it looks too polished and too sophisticated,
Hmm.
they're not making money selling dogs. They could care less. They're an actor or an actress, very good looking,
Hmm.
very professional screen appearance from acting school,
Hmm.
and that looks too slick. Here we don't look slick. We talk
Yeah,
to you
we regular people.
like regular people. And I
Yeah.
think hopefully people will give us a chance to grow by clicking like and subscribe and listening to our content. That's all we ask.
Yes, sir. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, it's been a pleasure.
A pleasure as
Thanks
well.
once
Thank
again.
you, Joe.
All
Thank
right.
you.